Hello, everybody, and either welcome or welcome back to my podcast. As always, I do like to remind you, if you do like this, please rate, comment, and subscribe. You can find me on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify, and YouTube. Okay, let's go ahead and get into this, because this past week, like it seems every other past week for God knows how long, there's been a lot of stuff going on. So there's a lot of things I want to go ahead and discuss. So I want to start with where we kind of left off on last week's podcast, which is discussing the Khashoggi situation, because there's been a lot of developments. And I know it seems like it was probably like a month ago that we started talking about this, but you guys remember Jamal Khashoggi, the dead, missing, bodied, multiple stories of death having Washington Post journalist. Yeah, there's been quite a lot of developments since the last time I talked about this. So remember when I had pointed out last week that Saudi Arabia was a bunch of lying ass liars with their original story of, gee, I don't know what happened. Well, I was right. They were a bunch of lying ass liars, and they've continued to be a bunch of lying ass liars, but we'll get there. I want to do this kind of sequentially, because I had said last week that I had seen it floated that they were going to go with the excuse of something happened during an interrogation and they pivoted away from that excuse. Well, they had pivoted back to that excuse and basically tried to float the story that, well, we just picked him up to ask him some questions and then a fist fight broke out and LOL, he died. Which, are you fucking kidding me? Like, oh my god, these people are the worst at coming up with some fucking stories. Let me tell you what. Because, as you remember, there was a 15-man Saudi squad sent to the consulate. So you're telling me that a fist fight broke out between multiple people, maybe not entirely 15, but definitely, I'd say maybe more than 5, I'm guessing, against one person, and he just died? And it wasn't planned? It just kind of was, oops. I mean, first of all, like, multiple people on one person isn't a fist fight. That's a beating. So you pivoted from, I don't know, to we beat him to death. Which I guess, I don't know, maybe a little better than having it known that you hacked a man to death. But not by much. I mean, you're still admitting that you killed him, which this is the first point in which they've actually admitted that, yes, he's dead and we killed him. So, moving forward from that, what was supposed to happen this week, well, it did happen, is there was a business summit. And to kind of back up a little bit, to give you kind of the backstory on what Saudi Arabia is trying to do. Ever since, I think you could probably trace it back maybe even to before Mohammed bin Salman, which is their current crown prince, was, brought into office isn't really the right word because he wasn't elected, he was appointed. But Saudi Arabia has been trying for some years to point themselves as kind of a more kinder, gentler, more moderate Saudi Arabia, trying to kind of minimize the Wahhabist influences in society and present themselves as something a little more palatable to Western interests in order to court Western businesses and Western investors to start investing money into Saudi Arabia so that they can kind of diversify their portfolio so that they're not completely dependent on oil wealth. Think kind of what UAE did, where they decided not to just depend solely on oil, but kind of position themselves as this place that is a very hot tourist spot. I mean, Dubai is one of the hottest places on earth. And so Saudi Arabia was trying to do something along the lines of that same thing. Now, here comes MBS with his dumbass idea that I have to kill this dissident journalist because I don't know why. I don't know why you would even risk this, but obviously the blowback from killing Khashoggi has been that a lot of Western businesses pulled out of the summit. Obviously, because now you can't be seen as supporting Saudi Arabia. Plus, the mask slipped a little bit. Like, you're trying to present yourself as much more moderate, but you still have a regime that is killing dissident journalists. So you haven't really changed quite as much as you said you did. But what's interesting to me about this situation is with businesses pulling out of this conference, it is kind of in and of itself its own form of sanctions, which I don't know if we're ever going to get official sanctions from Congress on Saudi Arabia. I'm not holding my breath. But it was just kind of a funny little market-based example of the idea that you can punish countries for bad behavior without waiting for Congress or the government to do it for you. Like, you can do it through the market. And I don't doubt that this nonsense just cost Saudi Arabia billions of dollars. Like, I cannot imagine being this fucking stupid right before a summit that was basically going to kick off like phase 2 of the Saudi Arabia plan. And then MBS comes along and just blows a big old journalist-sized hole in it. And I can't imagine that there's very many people in the royal family that are very happy with him right now. But yeah, it's funny to see how sometimes the market can handle situations much quicker and better than waiting for the government to do it for you. Like, this is immediate. Like, they're going to feel it like right now. Sanctions, like I said, I'm not holding my breath, but even if they do come, I mean, you're looking months maybe. And depending on what the sanctions are, like, they may not even give a shit. This Saudi Arabia is going to give a shit about. But to get back to the ever-evolving Khashoggi story, so at this point, it looks like they've taken 15 people into custody in relationship to his killing. And what has been so interesting about this to me is Turkey's involvement. And for what it's worth, I mean, everybody says that the only reason that this whole thing is in the press is because it was a member of the press that got killed, which, sure, there is that, but I think that excuse downplays Turkey's role in this and their kind of really shadiness, honestly. Like, this whole campaign that they've had ever since Khashoggi went missing of this, like, drip, drip, drip of just lurid details, just putting it out there and making it known that they have audio and video. And at this point, I absolutely, positively, 1000% believe they have audio and video. Because as soon as Saudi Arabia came out with the LOL, oops, it was a fist fight thing, Turkey started releasing more information. Basically along the lines that, oh, Saudi Arabia has had this planned. Like, they had this planned a couple days beforehand. And it's even to the point where Turkey's president actually went in front of their parliament and said that out loud. Like, said it, and like the international press picked it up, obviously. I mean, you can go see it on YouTube, but the president of Turkey is sitting there saying, no, Saudi Arabia totally had this planned. It wasn't an accident. That's not how it went down. And it's just like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, what is going on? Like, what are you doing, Turkey? Like, I'm not mad, but it's just like, wow, And to think that there was actually rumors that, like, Saudi Arabia and Turkey would reach some kind of agreement and this would all get swept under the rug, like, it doesn't look like that's planning on happening anytime soon. But it's been fascinating, and I've wondered more than once, like, why is Turkey doing this? And I mean, you can come up with your own reasons. I mean, Turkey and Saudi Arabia have never been like super best friendies, but this is just, maybe this is diplomacy going forward, because I mean, international diplomacy has always been dirty, nasty, underhanded business, but doing this, like, I don't imagine that stuff like this has not happened in private, like back-channeled and behind closed doors and stuff like that. The fact that Turkey is doing this in public, like, you're publicly punking Saudi Arabia at this point, like, they're just fucking with them. Like, basically, you're just daring Saudi Arabia to, like, come up with another bullshit excuse so you can dunk on it. Like, I guess maybe, I don't know if you can entirely attribute this to our new Trump era, but maybe this idea that diplomacy isn't something that happens behind closed doors anymore. This is something that you just do out in the open, and you can be as hostile and vicious and as nasty as you want to be, and you don't have to pretend to be anything other than that. Maybe that is shading this. Like, maybe Turkey was just like, you know what? Fuck it. These are the new rules, and we're going to play by them. So it's just, it's an interesting look into where Middle Eastern politics is right now. And I think a lot of the people who are in the who cares camp are kind of missing the forest for the trees on this one, because there's a lot of information to unpack here, especially when it comes to how things are being run in Saudi Arabia right now. I was reading up on this, and I was pretty shocked when I found out like how crazy things have gotten in Saudi Arabia. Because like I mentioned, their current crown prince, which the crown prince is who runs the country on a day-to-day basis. The king is kind of like a figurehead, but he picks the crown prince, and it's obviously one of his sons. But Mohammed bin Salman is the crown prince. We will call him MBS from now on because it's way easier. But this is a 33-year-old man who, by the way, was a controversial pick to begin with, because the king has older sons that he passed over for MBS. But he's 33 years old, and he's never really left the kingdom, which is incredibly odd for Saudi royal family members, especially if they are somebody who is being groomed for a senior position. Normally, they're sent abroad for schooling, not just for the prestige and all that, but so that those kids, when they come back and they assume their positions, know a little something about the world around them. This kid did not have that. So when I found that out, like I was really surprised, and it made some things make sense to me, because first of all, like I was kind of surprised that anybody would be surprised that Turkey had bugged the Saudi consulate, because I mean, all of us, I'm sure, are pretty much jaded to the way governments work. I mean, I'm sure if any of us found out that the U.S. government was bugging consulates and embassies that are on U.S. soil, we'd all be like, well, yeah, of course. But I don't think it ever occurred to MBS that Turkey would have the Saudi consulate bugged, because if it did, I would think you wouldn't pull a stunt like this. But it's just like that level of, I don't know, naivety or just ignorance of how the world works is kind of shocking. And the second takeaway about MBS that I want to talk about here is, especially when it comes to future U.S.-Saudi relations, I guess we are supposed to be negotiating some kind of plan with them to try to stabilize the Middle East. But this incident shows that MBS is somebody who, it may not be the sharpest crayon in the box, because what he just did was tanked years and years and years of work on just refining Saudi Arabia's image to make it more palatable to Westerners. And because he wanted this one dissident journalist killed, like, you tanked all of that. Like, you just blew it. For what exactly? So understand that you're dealing with somebody who doesn't really seem to understand the long game and would rather pop off and do something really stupid and immature instead of maybe taking a step back and thinking things through. It might be a little bit of a man-child. Does this sound familiar to anybody? But yeah, when somebody shows you who they are, believe them. I mean, there is value to that statement. And in this instance, I do think MBS kind of showed who he is as a person and as a leader and where his priorities are. And so if this isn't a red flag, it should be a very, very large yellow flag going forward dealing with this dude, that maybe we should be a little careful with this dude, because obviously he's not the one that's like going to really like be the most stable, I don't think. And obviously, I mentioned it last week, I will mention it again, is obviously willing to lie to the president and to the Secretary of State. So, yeah, maybe be a little careful with this dude. Maybe let's take a step back here and maybe not. Let's maybe give this 6 months, 9 months, a year before trying to negotiate anything with Saudi Arabia, because I'm not privy to any kind of palace intrigue, obviously, but I don't imagine there are very many people in the Saudi royal family who are very happy with MBS right now. And so maybe he won't be the crown prince this time next year. I don't know. I don't think anybody knows. But yeah, this incident has much further reaching ramifications than, oh, well, it's a dead journalist. Like, no, there's a lot to unpack here, and there's a lot that people really need to be paying attention to, especially going forward. But to kind of keep moving forward, at least Trump, for his I guess, credit, is finally coming around to the fact that that MBS lied to him. And his quote, I don't have it pulled up, but it's basically about, to sum it up, it's like, this idea was stupid, this cover-up is stupid, this is the worst cover-up ever in the history of cover-ups. It's like, well, at least you're finally acknowledging that you were lied to, so maybe there's that? Maybe? But to sum up where we are with this, and something I did see come down my timeline the other day is, I think it's UK and Germany who are starting to question selling arms to Saudi Arabia based on the morality of the Yemen situation, which has been discussed a little more now that the Khashoggi situation has come up. Not as much as I'd like, but it's at least getting a little bit of attention. And so I'm wondering, like, when do we get to have that moral discussion? Like, when is anybody in our government going to sit down and really think about not just the money, but what is being done with those weapons? And are we okay with that? Like, is this something that the U.S. wants to be backing? And it's not just arms sales. I mean, we provide other material support. We provide troops. Like, there's troops in Saudi Arabia right now, and there's troops in Yemen that are helping fight for Saudi forces. So maybe the next step in this is maybe we can have the moral discussion and start talking about, hey, these guys are kind of fucked up. Maybe we should stop helping them so much. That's the hope. Always cross our fingers, but moving on. The next thing I want to talk about is the Mitch McConnell incident, which, if you have not seen the video, I'll try to find a link and post it in the show notes, but I'm sure everybody has at this point. Basically, Mitch was at a restaurant, I think it was in Wisconsin. I think him and his wife were there, and some fucking jackass, as people do now, threw a doggy bag of food. It seems to be questionable whether it was Mitch's doggy bag of food or the grandstanding jackass's doggy bag of food, but a doggy bag of food was thrown, and yelling happened. And basically, it was another one of these little situations where somebody wants to try to accost a politician in public and be a grandstanding jackass and yell at them, and to Cocaine Mitch's credit, he could give zero fucks. Like, he's just sitting there looking at this dude like, I don't give a fuck about you. I mean, the other diners are sitting here yelling at this dude to, like, sit down or shut up or get the hell out or just stop. And Mitch doesn't give a fuck. Which, side note, is Cocaine Mitch not the best backfire of a slur ever? Like, thank you to Blankenship for giving us Cocaine Mitch and his China people, because now Mitch McConnell is Cocaine Mitch for forever and ever. Anyway, but it was just the latest example, and Nancy Pelosi had one of these little mobs follow her too, screaming and yelling about God knows what. But it's this idea of kind of mob mentality where it's being made to be okay to go yell at people in public. Like, Maxine Waters has advocated people doing this. And it's just like, what? This is so fucking stupid. Like, first of all, I tweeted this out, and I will say it again, and I will stand by it. If somebody is sitting there and basically just yelling and screaming and carrying on, like, you're not trying to have a conversation with somebody, you're not actually trying to engage in a discussion, you're being a grandstanding jackass, you're trying to go viral, so everybody treat these people accordingly. Like, you're not a serious person. You're not having a serious discussion. You're not trying to have a serious discussion. You're trying to virtue signal and hopefully get on the internet so that your virtue signaling buddies will all smile and clap and be like, hey, look, you really showed him. Which, that's why I like the Mitch video so much, is because Mitch McConnell is just sitting there like, so? Like, what do you want? Like, just the look on his face, it's priceless. Like, I swear, if you have not seen it, you need to see it. But it's just this nonsense. Like, honestly, what the fuck is anybody trying to accomplish by doing this? I don't get it. Like, what is the point? Like, I mean, that's all it is it's grandstanding virtue signaling, and it's really fucking stupid. And just, I wish it would stop, because you're just dumb. Like, it's just fucking dumb. Like, you look like a child in public. Like, who does that? Who just throws a temper tantrum at somebody in public? Like, what? Like, no, just stop. But I wanted to hit on that, because obviously we can't discuss this week without discussing that story. And it was really a genuinely funny story. And the best part about the video is the woman that's taking the video. It's like, I'm going to sell it to TMZ. And she did. She did sell it to TMZ because TMZ had the exclusive on it. So props to her for following through, for selling that video to TMZ. I hope she got some money for it. I mean, why not? Capitalism, right? But moving on to more important things, and in the vein of mobs, allegedly, apparently, the caravan that's coming for us, the migrant mob, the horde of people that apparently are just like, I don't know if people think that there's this like a scene from The Walking Dead where there's just like a horde of people coming towards us and they're going to overtake us and just going to storm the gates and knock them down like a horde of zombies. It's like, what the fuck? So, anyway, if you have not noticed, there is another caravan heading towards the southern border, the same way that it happened in the springtime, which, by the way, is kind of the same thing that happens at least once or twice a year. Normally once in spring and once in fall, because, I mean, if you've got to walk from country A to here, I mean, at least you wait for good weather, right? Like, you don't want to do it in the summer and you don't want to do it in the winter. So, yes, there's another migrant caravan heading this way. And, of course, because it's midterm time and everything has to be a big fucking issue all the time, everywhere, at all times, this is just being completely overpublicized and overblown and acting like it's about to be, like, the worst thing that could ever possibly happen to America. And I really think, like, I think there are people that think that, like, this, like, caravan of what it's allegedly like 7,000 people right now. Who knows how many will actually make it to the United States? Much like the one that happened in the spring, there was just these wildly inflated numbers, and it actually ended up being like less than 1,000 people that actually made it to a port of entry. So whatever, we'll see how many people actually make it here. But like this idea that they're gonna like storm the breaches and just knock their way into the United States and then run wild and do God knows what. I don't know what people think that immigrants do when they come here. Like, I don't know. Anyway, word came out today that there may be an order signed to send 800 people, or not 800 people, 800 military. It wasn't really specified which branch of military, down to the border to help assist Border Patrol. Now, this whole thing is political theater. Let's keep it real. Like, honestly, nobody cares about the brown people. The people that don't want them here don't really care about them. The people that do want them here don't really care about them as people. They don't really give a shit. This is all just some dumbass dumbass little game to make it look like, oh, we're tough on immigration and they're not tough on immigration and blah, 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 blah. It's like, stop it. But I was thinking about it, and this kind of goes to my, I don't know if I ever did talk about it on the podcast or not, but my ideas about the wall and also this idea of militarizing the border. That squicks me out, to be completely honest. Like, everybody who advocates for these sorts of things, like if you advocate for the wall, if you advocate for militarizing the border, you better take a long, hard look at what that would look like. Like, imagine being in the United States and having a militarized border. Or imagine being in the United States and you go down to the US-Mexico border and there's a wall. Like, that makes me claustrophobic to think about, and I don't live anywhere near a border town. Like, I can't imagine that. Like, that's so bad. That's so dystopian. Like, I don't understand. I mean, I guess people are just that afraid of brown people. I don't fucking know, but it's like, do you not understand that is going to work against you someday? That having a wall keeps people in as much as it keeps people out, and having a militarized border keeps people in as much as it keeps people out. Like, this is not a standard that you want to start applying to the United States of America. Take a big step back, really think about how that is going to impact you as an American, because make no mistake, that will impact you as an American. It will not just be used against the brown people, okay? It will be used against the native born too. Like, don't get it twisted. The Berlin Wall was for East Germany and West Germany equally. Like, every time a wall has been enacted, it has been for both sides of the wall. So, stop and think before you advocate for something, because just the golden rule, people. Don't advocate for something to be done to somebody else that you wouldn't have done to yourself. Don't advocate for living in a country that you think, like you think it will never be used against you. It will be used against you. And especially the whole idea of sending troops to the border. It's just like, militarized borders are like, that's now you're stepping on like Middle Eastern stuff. Like, now you're starting to get to those optics, and it's just, where does it end? Like, where does that end? Like, I do not support that at all. Like, there's no good end to that. There's no good end at all to any of that. So, moving on from that a little bit, I do want to talk about, before we leave this topic of the immigrant caravan, what exactly it is these immigrants are coming here to do. And this is kind of apropos of Twitter conversations I was having before I started recording. And understand what it is that these people are trying to do. And even Donald Trump tweeted about this, and he got it completely fucking wrong. These immigrants are not coming here to seek citizenship. Like, that is like a far off dream for these people. So it's not applying for citizenship. It's not getting citizenship. This has nothing to do with citizenship. What these people are coming to do is try to seek asylum. Now, in order to seek asylum in the United States, the first step that you have to do is you have to present yourself to a port of entry or to Border Patrol, which means you have to be on U.S. soil to do this. Now, I've seen people ask, and I've answered it on Twitter, and I will talk about it here because here we are. The idea that normally, like, okay, let me back up a little bit. Usually, if an immigrant is traveling from country A to country B, and we'll say country B is the U.S., if there is what is known as a safe country in between country A and here, you are expected to present yourself in that country for asylum in that country. Herein lies the problem. Most of these immigrants are coming from the Northern Triangle, which is what is typically what we call Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras. It's referred to as the Northern Triangle. They're coming from there. They're coming through Mexico. Mexico is not designated as a safe country, and unlike the US and Canada, there is no first country rule, which states that if you are coming through from wherever and you're going to seek asylum in Canada, if you come through the US first, you have to seek asylum in the US. We have that agreement with Canada. We do not have that agreement with Mexico. So there is no point between the Northern Triangle and a U.S. port of entry for these people to present themselves for asylum. So I think that's a big misconception that a lot of people have. Another one is that you can go seek asylum by presenting yourself to an embassy or a consulate, which you cannot. Per U.S. rules, per U.S. law, if you are seeking asylum in the United States of America, the first step is you have to be in the United States of America. So that is the whole purpose of these caravans and of people coming to the border, is they can't do it from their own country. You have to be here first. So obviously the first step is to get yourself to the United States and either go through a port of entry, and hopefully we're not doing some fuckery on that day where, oh look, the port is closed. Like, really? Really? Because all that does is just encourage people to hop the border and present themselves to Border Patrol, which, by the way, hopping the border is a misdemeanor. So let's not pretend like this is some grand crime, people. It's a fucking misdemeanor. But if you can't get through a port, then you do that. You present yourself to Border Patrol, and then they put you in detention, and that's how you enter the asylum process. But that's what these people are trying to do. They're trying to seek asylum. Now, here's where things get a little messy. Under U.S. law, you can apply for asylum for a couple different reasons. One of them being persecution. Now, normally we have defined persecution as persecution by a government, whatever the government of the country you're coming from, or of a religious institution, like if you're a religious refugee, like Syrians, or something like that. Or as a political refugee, like that's normally how we treated people leaving communist countries, people defecting. They were considered political refugees because they were considered to be people that were being persecuted by their government. So, what you have now is this group of people who are applying for asylum in the U.S., and they're claiming persecution not necessarily from their governments, even though their governments may be corrupt, but are still democratic, kinda? Like, you know how that works, but what they're claiming is they're escaping cartel violence and they're escaping gang violence. So I think where the conversation really needs to be right now is, does that automatically, does that count? Like, for asylum? If you're not technically escaping a government and you're not technically escaping like some religious group trying to kill you, where does that fall on the asylum spectrum? Because you can't deny that the countries that these people are leaving are very fucked up countries. Like, they're shitholes, to use Trump's word. But I mean, it's true. It is what it is. And there's a lot of gang violence. There's a lot of cartel violence. There's a lot of government corruption. And I mean, I know my opinion. My opinion is that I think that is a valid reason to want to apply for asylum, because I mean, this is a hard one for me. Immigration, especially people leaving shitty countries, is a really hard one for me to kind of parse out rationally. Because, like I mentioned in my immigration episodes, I was born and raised in South Florida. I watched people escaping Cuba on a daily basis. Like, people just showing up in just shit that should not even be in the Atlantic Ocean. People floated 90 miles up the Atlantic Ocean. Like, I can't fathom, like, living someplace that shitty. Like, I can't fathom living someplace that is so bad that you will walk to another country. You will walk through several countries to get to safety. Like, that's, I can't other those people. Like, I can't not understand what it is that they're trying to escape and the lengths that they're willing to go to escape, which, I mean, You don't do that if it's just like, this is a minor inconvenience, or this is kind of shitty. No, if you're doing that, if you're willing to risk your life to get away from someplace, it's gotta fucking suck. And I can't divorce that knowledge from this idea of like, okay, there's these people that are trying to come into the country. It's like, yeah, I get it. Like, I get why they want to come here, because where they live sucks. And to be honest, a lot of the reason why the places they live suck is kind of our fault. Kind of the war on drugs' fault. Like, we broke a lot of countries. So, yeah, for me, I can't really separate the emotional from the rational on this one. And I know everybody has feelings on immigration, and you can have whatever feelings you want. These are my feelings. The other part of this whole thing that kind of really just pisses me off is this whole idea of the size of the caravan. Which, like I said, they're estimating it at 7,000. Who knows how many will make it here. But this whole idea of like, oh my god, it's so many people. How are we going to process all of them? This is insane. We have to stop this somehow. Like, listen. Mariel boat lift. There was a point in the Mariel boat lift back in 1980. Like, this isn't some like Ellis Island shit. Like, this isn't from like way before times. Like, this was 1980. In 1 month, almost 87,000 Cuban refugees came through, and we processed them. 87,000 people. That's a lot of fucking people. Like, way more than 7,000. So this whole idea that, like, oh my god, this is going to totally overwhelm the country. It's like, no, it's not. We've handled way, way larger loads of immigrants showing up before. Like, what? Like, this is insane. Like, of course we can, like, we've done this before. This is nothing. This is actually probably pretty fucking normal. It's just, normally, it's not all over the television, so you don't know it's happening. But, yeah, we can process people coming into the country. We can process large amounts of people coming into the country without really skipping a beat. It's not that major, people. It's not that scary. Okay, even if all 7,000 people make it to a port of entry, alright, so you process them the same way you would if it was 700 people, or however many people. You just go through the process, you put them in the asylum system the same way we do all the time with all the other immigrants who come in to seek asylum into the United States. There's a process in place. It's not that big a fucking deal. The only reason it's being made a big deal is to scare people because it's midterm time. And I'm not entirely comfortable with the idea of turning people into political pawns. Like, these are actual people, you know? Like, seriously, can we not do that? Can we not? Please? Anyway. Moving on from that. The most recent story that we have going on now, and this kind of started yesterday, I'm sure everybody noticed, is that bombs everywhere. Bombs, everybody gets a bomb. You get a bomb, you get a bomb, you get a bomb. Or at least the ways, if you're Democrat, you get a bomb. Apparently, none of the rest of us get bombs. But here is the list of people who have, so far, received bombs in the mail-ish. It's kind of dubious. But starting with George Soros was the first one that would be reported. And then one showed up at the Clintons' house, the Obama's house. One showed up at the CNN New York headquarters that was addressed to John Brennan, but John Brennan doesn't work for CNN. So I don't really know where they were going with that. Eric Holder, Maxine Waters has gotten 2 of them, I do believe. I think Debbie Wasserman Schultz got one, which is kind of funny because the return address on the packages was from Debbie Wasserman Schultz. And then today, Robert De Niro and Joe Biden, which, how the fuck did De Niro get in here? Like, everybody else, it's pretty cut and dried, like where you were going with this, but fucking Robert De Niro? What did Robert De Niro ever do to anybody? Why the fuck is he getting a bomb? He's not even that particularly involved in politics. I mean, if you were gonna pick a celebrity, I would have picked, I don't know, somebody more recently involved. I don't know. Amy Schumer? I don't know. But basically, It seems like somebody mailed or didn't mail or hand delivered or who the hell knows, because this whole thing is still evolving. But all these different pipe bombs. And yeah, okay. Nobody knows at this point who did what and who did and didn't do it and what and this and that and the other. Nobody knows. So I'm not even going to begin to attempt to speculate on that. All I do know is that obviously the narratives have already hardened. If you are a left-winger, you think, oh my god, some crazy nutter right-winger is trying to bomb everybody. If you are a right-winger, you're screaming false flag. And if you're in the middle, I don't even know if you're paying attention to this, or if you even care. I don't know what centrists think, because nobody talks to centrists anymore. Apparently, they don't exist. Sorry, Tim Pool. Apparently, centrists don't exist anymore. That poor dude, he got beat up on Twitter this week, and that's just... Anyway. Not part of the story, but sad, nonetheless. Personally, I don't have a hardened opinion on this. I am hoping it is a false flag, because I don't really want to think about the possibility that it's not. And this is something that they touched on actually kind of presciently in the Reason podcast from Monday. And that's the idea that politics has certainly been way, way more violent, like physically violent, than it is right now. Like, okay, we have people yelling at people in public, which is not a good look. And you have people saying dumb shit on Twitter and people doing mean things online. Back in the 60s and 70s, you had these Salolinski types, these actual radicals, who bombed places. I mean, you had assassinations on a somewhat regular basis. Like, it was a lot more violent. Like, even campus protests, like even Kent State. Like, things have been a lot worse than they are right now, and I would very much like to not go back to things being that bad, because I don't want to see anybody hurt or killed. Especially since, in the case of these pipe bombs, it probably wouldn't have been the person that it was addressed to. It would be, like, a staffer. Because, let's face it, none of these people open their own mail. Like, what the fuck? It would be, like, somebody innocent, like whoever is in charge of opening the mail. I mean, Barack Obama doesn't open his own mail. Hillary Clinton doesn't open her own mail. George Soros doesn't open his own mail. None of these people open their own mail. So who are you trying to attack anyway? Even if you were trying to attack somebody, which thankfully none of these bombs went off. I don't really have an opinion about that, because I don't really know how mail bombs work. I don't know. I would think it would blow up in the mail, but I don't know how detonation works. Anyway, I'm just... I hope this is fake. I really genuinely do. Even as fucked up as that is, because, I mean, that's not something to joke about or to try to fake either. I mean, that's... There's a very bad history in this country with bombings. So maybe let's not go down that road, like even if you're just trying to fly a false flag, because that brings up some pretty squicky memories of times when they weren't false flags and they were successful and people did die. So yeah, that's where we're at with that right now. Like I said, it's a developing story. I mean, maybe we'll learn more about it, maybe we won't, who knows. But I want to go ahead and end this episode with kind of circling back to that recent podcast, because where they started with it is, who do you want to see lose the most this year? And I want to play this game because I have a pick, but not for the reasons that you would normally think. So my pick is, probably no surprise, Beto O'Rourke, which I'm pronouncing it Beto. Some people say Beto, some people say Beto. I'm going with Beto, because no matter what, it's still a stupid fucking nickname, and who gives themselves a nickname anyway? But yes, I'm going with Beto, and here's why. Aside from the obvious reasons, I am really, really tired of seeing media and just basically just a whole section of people trying to make all politics, national politics. Now, Beto is running against Ted Cruz for a Texas Senate seat. So, obviously, this should not really be of much concern to anybody outside of Texas because Beto would not be representing you. But, obviously, everybody seems to have come out of the woodwork to talk about this dude. I mean, there's been dozens of nationally published fluff pieces on this dude and people from all over the country contributing to his campaign. And I'm just like, why? This doesn't have anything to do with you. Like, he's not going to represent you. He's not running for president. He's running for a Senate seat in Texas. Like, why the fuck is this dude getting so much national attention when he's not running for a national office? But it is that idea that all politics is national politics now. And I'd really like to get back to the idea that some politics is just state politics or local politics and doesn't need to be this whole big elaborate thing where everybody in the fucking country has an opinion on it. And what is the funniest thing to me? First of all, I do not get the media's fascination with this dude. Okay, so he skateboards and played in a punk band when he was a kid. Congratulations, Beto O'Rourke is your average-ass basic Gen X dude. Like, really? Do you really think that's that exceptional? And oh look, he eats Whataburger. So? Lots of people eat fucking drive-thru burgers. That's not special. Like, I don't get where they're going. I don't get the fascination. He doesn't seem to be that interesting of a politician, to be completely honest. Or of a person, to be that completely honest. It's like, so? Like, okay, this is what you're gonna fluff dude for? Like, oh look, he rides a fucking skateboard. And oh hey look, he could play air drums to Baba O'Reilly, but he doesn't know when the keyboard part comes in. Really? You don't know when the keyboard part comes in on Baba O'Reilly? You lost cool points, dude. But what is so funny about this is, I think I can safely say at this point, I think the last time I saw Cruz has a 7-point lead on O'Rourke. So I think it's pretty safe to call it and say that Ted's going to win this one. Which means for all of the national attention, for all of the outside money, for all of that, he is still going to lose because the only people's opinion who matters about Beto O'Rourke are the people that live in Texas. Nobody cares about people in California with Beto lawn signs, or people in Georgia with Beto stickers on their cars, or people from New York donating to Beto's campaign. It doesn't fucking matter. All that matters is what the people of Texas think. So maybe everybody can step off of this kind of thing for a minute and maybe focus on the people running in your own state who might very well need the attention and need your money more so than some dude running in a state that you don't even fucking live in. Like, I don't get it. Like, I do not get the Beto thing. Like, I don't care who the senator of Texas is. I don't live in fucking Texas. I live in Georgia. Whoever represents Texas doesn't affect me. Doesn't affect anybody. And that's why I don't get this. So I would really like to see Beto lose so that we can stop this nonsense of trying to make all politics national politics. So, on that note, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. If you made it this far, thank you. And as always, if you do like it, please rate, comment, and subscribe. You can find me on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify, and YouTube. Take care, and until next time.